welcome to Doubles and Trebles. We're back with some darts content. It's been a busy period with the sport. We've had plenty of racing, plenty of golf. Pieman's been a busy man working on the Euros, etc. So yeah, we've got a darting major on the horizon, the World Matchplay at Blackpool. This is our first look. There's no odds yet, but we're just having a bit of an overview to see what's happening out there in the world of darts. It's been a while since we've had a chat, and any early thoughts. The current field is not confirmed until July the 10th, but Pieman's going to explain that very shortly. So we'd expect some odds to appear on Odds Checker shortly after July the 10th. But yeah, Pieman looking forward to a first major in some time.
Yeah, it's been a long time waiting, Adam, to be honest. I mean, obviously, this channel was generated off the momentum built through the World Championships in what seems like an eternity ago, but really it was only 6 months ago, really, when we were talking about darts every day for about 3 weeks. Yeah. And then we've had this like sort of really quiet period, as you do, you know, summer sport takes priority, horse, you get a lot of racing, a lot of football, a lot of all sorts going on. But they have been ticking over with the Super Series, as people who watch the darts regularly will know. You know, there's been plenty of 4-day blocks of action, but all non-televised stuff, really. And since the, you know, we've had the Premier League, which I know everyone has their opinions on and stuff. It's not a favourite of mine, really. You just see the same sort of 8 or 10 faces on a loop for 2 or 3 months, and it's very easy to forget about a lot of these quality players that are in form. Was obviously delighted that Johnny Clayton won it at 28-1 for the channel. That was a really good winner for us, and hopefully we're going to have a winner of this one as well at a decent price, because I've got a few I fancy. But yeah, just to give you a rough idea of the match play, obviously, as you said, at Blackpool, going to be running over 8 days in the middle of July 17th till the 25th. It's a legs format, ever increasing, very familiar. I think most people will consider this probably the second biggest event behind the Worlds in terms of prestige, certainly, just because it's got the history of being played at the same venue, always a very strong field, a tournament that Phil Taylor was absolutely dominant in during his career. And yeah, it's always a good field because you get the top 16 in the order of merit, and then you get the top 16 of the Pro Tour as well. So these players that are getting in through the Pro Tour back door, yes, you've got some players who would be in there anyway, you know, because they're top quality operators. But you've also got some of these lads who are very much up and comers who've shown form over the last 6 months, a few of which we've mentioned several times on this channel. So as it stands, the field isn't absolutely set in stone, but it's pretty close to being there. Just to give you a little bit of context, it's all to do with prize money earned in a set period of time. That helps them generate who's in and who's not. In terms of the top 16 in the order of merit, there's only really 2 or 3 players who could still squeeze their way in that area. A little bit different for the Pro Tour order of merit. There's actually only sort of 10 grand separating about 16th all the way down to about 33rd. So if one of these guys turns up at the last Super Series at the, you know, in a week or so's time, gets to a final, for example, they might shoot themselves up into a qualifying spot. So that's definitely one to keep an eye on at the next Super Series, because there'll be a few players. I mean, some big names in there as well missing out at the moment. Lads who could still get in include Stephen Bunting, Raymond van Barneveld, Simon Whitlock, etc. So definitely one to keep an eye on.
Yeah, and I think this really kicks off the serious starting season for me, to be honest, Pieman, because we've got this, and then we've got things like the Grand Slam and other tournaments as well, and then obviously leading into the big one in December. So yeah, looking forward to it. And like you say, I think that over the shorter period, it probably would be my favourite tournament to watch and to bet on as well, to be honest, because there's less of the early games with the qualifiers, and the set betting, the set matches can go on a long time. So someone with a short attention span like me, it's pretty much perfect. So yeah, as Pieman mentioned, starts on the 17th of July to the 25th in Blackpool as usual. Wasn't there last year for obvious reasons, but they're looking to get crowds in this year, depending on how the shambles is ongoing from between now and then. So if we take a look at the field as it appears now on Wikipedia, Pieman, with the Pro Tour 16 and the PDC Order of Merit 16, not set in stone as you say, but who would you fancy at this stage?
Well, I think you've got to break it down, really, haven't you? And it's going to be, to me, this is a market I'm looking forward to more than I've looked forward to seeing a first look of a market for a long time, because I just think a lot has changed in darts since we last had a full field market. you're probably going back to even, I mean, the Masters was a 24-runner event, but that was January. That was the last time we had like a knockout format with more than the Premier League players in, you know what I mean? So I think there's been a lot of water under the bridge since then. There's some of these players who are in there in that top 16 order of merit who I would say are fortunate to be in this tournament if they do get in, and they should do get. I'm talking about, Glenn Durrant in no kind of form. Daryl Gurney's not been in particularly good form. Rob Cross has been very hit and miss. So, they're players who are going to be seeded. But, I'm sure many people who have been following the darts away from the TV circuit will be very keen to take them on in their early games. And then on the other side, on this Pro Tour order of merit, this is like, I look at that list and I think that current 16 is a list of players that if you follow darts, you know a lot of these guys and you know they're really on an upward curve. But if you're a casual darts viewer who only watches the World Championship, you might look at some of these names and think, who the hell are these guys? But we know as regular viewers that there's some really decent players in here who could go far and maybe even have a chance at winning it. I'm talking about a Dirk van Dijvenbode in there as a qualifier, who's someone who's burst onto the scene in the last sort of 6 months to a year. Luke Humphries seems to have been making that next step in his career. He's got to fancy his chances of a big run here, having got to the final of the UK Open, where of course James Wade edged him out. Callan Ridd's someone I'm really excited and I'm delighted he's qualified for this tournament. I think he's gonna, he's very much got the chance to do some damage in here. Ryan Searle, a man you're a fan of and talked a lot about in the World Championships. He recently got to a Pro Tour final where he lost to an inspired Jose de Souza. Probably should have won that final, to be honest. So, I haven't even mentioned, Gabriel Clemens, Brendan Dolan, who's won a couple of Pro Tour events from nowhere, having an absolute renaissance. Rasmus currently sneaking in there. So there's some really intriguing names. Damon Hetta, friend of the channel, of course, is in there. Number 2 in the Pro Tour order of merit. Fair play to Damo. But I don't know. I guess we've got to look at the favourites first of all, haven't you, really? That's where you've got to start. Gerwyn Price, MVG, Peter Wright. I mean, the last Super Series, we saw Peter Wright at his brilliant best, averaging 108, 110, 106 to win the final. We all know he's got it in the locker, but we've said it many, many, many times on this channel.
Well, I read an interview last week, Pieman, to Sky Sports, and he said he's going to do away with that and he's going to stick with it. He's
going to do the double.
Do we believe him? Probably not. But yeah, I mean, I think that was a record for average across a winning day on the Super Series, something along them lines. Just on the Super Series, Pieman, I'll touch on that. To my reckoning, I think there's been 16 events so far.
Correct.
Jose de Souza's won 3 of them. What more do you need to know? He's made the Premier League final from an unlikely position at the halfway stage. He would have been odds against to make the top 4. He's won 3 of the Pro Tour events. He's in sensational form, and he's really answered the likes of myself, who was a fan of him. Off the back of it this time about a year ago when he kind of burst onto the scene, even though he's a middle-aged man. But I questioned whether he could beat the big boys when it counted. Well, he's done that on the stage in the Premier League, and he's also been doing it on the Pro Tour as well. But the cream really has risen to the top on the Pro Tour so far this year, I would say, Pieman. Like I say, Jose's got 3, Snakebite's won 2, Clayton's won 2. I mean, he continues to do. I think he won the first one. He continues to go really well in these events as well. Cullen continues to prove himself at the top. At the top table, he's been to a few. He's been to a few finals. He's not quite done it on TV yet, but it's only a matter of time, I think, with Cullen. Dimitri's got his first Pro Tour win in April. And Big Dirk, another man who burst onto the scene last year, he's got his first PDC ranking title of any type. Has Callum Ridds, who you've mentioned as well. So Big Dirk and Ridds are really building on their promise that they showed last year. So, like I say, cream's rising to the top, and one you've already mentioned as well, Brendan Dolan. A bit of renaissance is definitely the right word you use there, Pieman, for sure.
I couldn't have had Brendan Dolan doing that. I mean, if you told me before he refound this form that Brendan Dolan was going to produce that, I'd have laughed in your face, to be honest. But fair play to him, because he everything he said after that, it just sort of indicates to me that it's a mindset thing with some of these guys that we've seen it and they haven't done it for a little while. Another one that I do want to mention, who's not currently qualifying but could still sneak in with a big Super Series, is Adrian Lewis. At the last Super Series, we saw the best Adrian Lewis we've seen for some time. I'm really hoping he can put a run together at that last Super Series and get in there, because I think he could, he could do some damage at a massive price. So
it's just replicating that for Lewis. That's been his problem, hasn't it? He'll have 1 or 2 events a year, normally on the Pro Tour rather than, it's been a while since he's done it on TV, but he'll show a bit on the Pro Tour, get to a final, fall out with someone on the way, but it's just replicating that. I hope he can. I always say darts is a better place.
FYI, Adrian Lewis is currently about $6,000 behind the last qualifying spot, so he's probably going to have to go to a couple of semi-finals or a final. The way he was playing them last 4 days, he's more than capable. I'm just hoping it might have finally clicked again for Adrian, and maybe he's taking inspiration from the likes of Brendan Dolan and seeing these people refine their best form.
Right, so we're going to touch on the world champion, the world #1, Gerwyn Price. As we know, pulled out of the Premier League due to COVID, missed some Pro Tour events as well as a result of that. But he came back firing, Pieman. Did he win on his first or second day back at the Pro Tour? Am I right there?
He was very good at the Pro Tour, yeah. Come back, competing at the back end of pretty much all of the events, to be honest. I think there was one where he was knocked out first round, but that can happen to any one of them first to six leg games. But no, it was a Price. We expected him to come back roaring, and he did. And he's in a good place. It's got to be one of the strangest title defences of the world we've ever seen. We're into nearly into July, coming into the match play. We've barely seen him. So it's very hard to put a marker on just where he is going, Price. But if we know anything from his rise into the sport, from the the lower echelons of the rankings as an amateur, and getting his tour card and working his way up all the way to be #1 and world champion, we know that he's prepared to dig in when the chips are down, and he's not somebody that will make excuses and stuff. And I don't know. It's very hard to gauge exactly where he's going to be, but I'd be very surprised if we don't see a strong run from him in this tournament. I think he'll be absolutely desperate to get back on the TV and remind everybody why he is world #1.
And he's one of quite a few that have said they're clearly looking forward to getting the crowds back to some degree, and that should happen at Blackpool. Before we move on to the picks, Pieman, obviously we're going to have to touch on Michael van Gerwen, 3-time world champion. He's still been chipping away is probably the wrong description, but he's still been there or thereabouts on the tour, as we fully expect. He's just going about his business. May not be pulling up any trees like he used to because the field's closed on him, but he's still there. He's still got the high rank, and he's obviously still going to be a threat. Will he go off favourite? That's the question.
I don't know, is the honest answer. I don't think he should. Because he's gone a little while without a win now, and this is becoming a bit of a problem. And he got to a Pro Tour final at Players Championship 15, I think it was, against Jose. Do you know what? He had that game in the palm of his hands, and Jose played well, don't get me wrong, but so did MVG. But when it came to the crunch, it was coming down to the last 3 legs. Go back a year, 2 years. There's only one winner when it goes to the last 3 legs in a game with Michael van Gerwen. But you just didn't feel like he was going to do it. You felt like Jose was going to get over the line. And a lot of that has to be credit to Jose and where he's at with his game. But also, I feel like that was a big one for MVG. He got a bit tetchy in that little Pro Tour final against Jose. He roared after a 180. Jose gave him a little bit back on his next throw, and MVG kind of had a word with him and gave him a little bit of a tap on the shoulder, and it seemed to really frustrate him. That's a sign of where he's at with his game, I think. So I personally wouldn't have him favourite. You can never have him too far off the favourite, don't get me wrong, but I would be putting Price maybe a point ahead of MVG on the first show.
Yeah, I watched that final on PDC TV, and like you said, I think it was twofold, Pieman, as you've kind of touched on. It was Jose not being worried about who he's facing and in top form, and it was MVG, as we've seen a few times. Clayton's done him a few times, etc. Just not quite getting over the line and not quite having that fear factor he used to have, but obviously it's still great to have him around, and hopefully he can be on top form. So, difficult question, Pieman, because A, we've not got the final field, and B, we've not got any prices whatsoever. But who would you be picking at this stage?
The person I'll be most interested on the price, I'm quite confident this guy's going to get put in too big for this market. Joe Cullen is the person I want to be with for this tournament. I just feel like it's all come together for Joe Cullen. He seemed to have a breakthrough at the back end of last year. He had that fantastic game with Van Gerwen, which he lost in the deciding leg at the Worlds. Lost nothing in defeat for my money. I thought it was fantastic. And, when you're in a deciding leg with Michael van Gerwen and he goes off with a 180, is there many players that wouldn't struggle to, bounce back from that? It was such an energy sapping match. I thought it was fantastic. He missed a bullseye, wired a bullseye to beat him. So at that point, I'd considered him as making making a breakthrough. From there, I don't think he's done an awful lot wrong, to be honest. He bumped into one at the Masters and exited that one when I quite fancied him. Then he's missed out on the Premier League. And because he's missed out on the Premier League, we haven't really seen him for months. But he's still in fantastic form. And he came back to this Super Series. First week, we put him up 28-1 on the channel, and he was in and won it. Beat MVG, beat Price. You know, it was fantastic all day. I really do think he's at a good place in his head and in his career. I listened to an interview with him last week. He said, I think my stock's risen now. I think people in darts know how good I am now, and I know how good I am now. I just like what I'm hearing from him. I think you'll know from, you know, talking regularly about darts with me and people that watch the channel will know I'm a big fan of Johnny Clayton. I just feel like Johnny Clayton's prices, the cat's out of the bag with Johnny Clayton. He's just won the Premier League. You're not going to get Johnny Clayton put in at a big price for this. He's going to be 4th or 5th favourite, quite rightly. And I would still be interested because they might put him in a couple of points too big still, you know, whatever. But if I'm looking at one man where I think the price is just going to be flat out wrong, I think it could be Joe Cullen. I really do think he's in a place to win that first major. I'm really excited to see what he gets put in at. I anticipate he may be a general sort of 20. I think I'm fancying a supplier, at least one or two, to get him wrong, put him in at 33. You know, maybe you're working a boost into there. That might be a clue for people. You know, so I do think there's big potential for Joe Cullen to just be the wrong price. And then if I was going to take a flyer at someone to do some damage from the other side of the draw, I've already mentioned him, but Callum Ridds, I think, looked in a good place again for the Pro Tour. So, yeah, he would be my flyer at a big price. But as I say, we don't know the prices at the moment, so I can't be too confident. Just keep an eye out for Joe Cullen's price.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. He's going to be the one to be underestimated in the market. I'm going to put a word in for a guy that will be overestimated for sure, or won't be missed in the market. His name's Dimitri van Den Bergh. We spoke about him a lot for majors, etc. There's no prices at the minute, but like I say, he's got that Pro Tour win. That was his first. He's had a major win previously last year. You know, on his best game, he's as good as anyone out there at the moment. He really is, but it's just replicating that best game. So that would be where I would be looking when the prices become available. If he's 10 or 12-1, I'll be interested. But we'll be back closer to the time, Pieman, with some more. When the odds are up, we'll be having another look at the World Matchplay. So thanks for tuning in, and we'll speak to you soon.
Cheers.